Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Scouting 5, recapping scouting news from around the world for the week of February 28th, 2022. I am Scouter Ken, and I am once again recording from St. Albert, Alberta. It's been a little over a week since Russian troops invaded the Ukraine, and of course we've all been watching the tragedies there unfold on an almost daily basis, and in fact almost in real time on social media. There is some good news in the sense that Ukrainians are receiving an influx of solidarity and support from scouts around the world, quoting scout.org. Through acts of kindness and generous donations of all sizes to the ongoing funding appeal, the Scout movement has united in a show of strength and compassion for those being impacted by the conflict in Ukraine. Already, more than $100,000 in funding has been generously donated by local Scout groups, individual supporters, and national Scout organizations to support emergency response and relief efforts of those in need. These funds will be directed to the National Organization of the Scouts of Ukraine to provide food, medicine, sleeping equipment, and other necessary supplies, along with the coordination of psychological support to young people and communities impacted by the conflict. More than 500,000 refugees, mostly women and children, have fled Ukraine since last week, and the United Nations says it is preparing for up to 4 million refugees from Ukraine in the coming days and weeks. Refugees are already arriving in Poland, Hungary, Moldova, Romania, and Slovakia, and this sudden influx of displaced persons requires a great deal of emergency logistical support, including the coordination of volunteers and supplies. These conditions have prompted a wave of resilience, compassion, and responsiveness from Scouts in the region, and offers for additional support by neighboring NSOs. They go on to list some of the different stories that have come out of scouting movements in the region for over the last week or so. The Scouts of Ukraine have not been inactive during this time. Scout centers in Kiev and Odessa, for example, have been used to collect clothes, shoes, sleeping bags, mats, food, other stuff. Field kitchens have been set up. Scout leaders have been sheltering with Scouts, keeping them safe and entertained. The Scouts of Odessa organized online meetings for children to help lift their spirits and to entertain them with guest musicians and the like. You can actually follow the Ukrainian Scouts on Instagram. That is something that the World Organization is recommending in their article about this. They are providing updates when they can about things that are going on in the country and things that they are doing to try and support people. But it's really great to see that they have not been inactive during this time, although obviously we do hope for the safety of all members of Scouting that are in the crosshairs of this conflict. Over in Poland, Scouts have been transforming their Scout centers into temporary shelters for refugees, setting up cots and preparing to help those who need a place to stay. Other groups have been coordinating the collection of supplies, including food and clothes and blankets, hygiene products, and medicines. In Czechia, which doesn't actually border Ukraine, but still is, expecting to see an influx of refugees. And of course, the Scouts there have also been collecting supplies to help out refugees in need. Evidently, 55 vans, 2 buses, and 2 small trucks of supplies so far have been collected. This mostly in Prague. Citizens there have been contributing, and Scouts have been instrumental in sorting and packing and delivering materials. Importantly, the Czech Scouts have been coordinating a lot of their donation drives based on needs requested by Ukrainian partners. And of course, they've been sharing resources for parents and educators to talk about war and how to do so with children. In Romania, meanwhile, more than 67,000 Ukrainians have already crossed the border into Romania. Romanian Scouts, though, have been coordinating resources and volunteers from across the country to provide housing and transport of goods, equipment, first aid when needed. They're partnering with other local organizations to find host families for refugees. And other Scouts in the region, places like Hungary, Estonia, Slovakia, Lithuania, have again been assisting by collecting supplies, finding volunteers for support of communications, doing fundraising, and also, of course, helping refugees as they trickle into these other countries. The World Organization have been raising funds through their Scout donation platform. It's a crowdfunding site that they set up a few years back, and like I said earlier, about $100,000 has been raised so far. They're hoping to raise at least another $100,000 and more beyond that. So please do check out the link in the show notes. It will have links to not only all of these great stories, but also a whole bunch of resources and the donation website. Unfortunately, Ukraine is not the only place in the world where things have been happening that have impacted the lives of other people in a negative way. Tropical cyclones Ana and Batsarai hit parts of Madagascar and Malawi and Mozambique and Zimbabwe in late January. This included things like massive flooding, destruction of homes and crop fields, and of course some loss of life and property. However, scouts there have been rising to the challenge, quoting scout.org again. In Madagascar, scouts aged 18 years and above, together with their leaders, have been volunteering in accommodating centers to support rescue efforts inspired by the scout motto to be prepared and driven by a desire to make an impact. They have so far assisted with conducting a census of victims who were in accommodation centers to map out and reunite families. They're also raising awareness and providing warning signs, monitoring for abuse among women and children in the accommodation centers. To cheer up the victims, Scouts and Guides are organizing fun and entertaining activities for children. More critically, Scouts have made donations of foodstuffs, clothes, and other necessities to families, aside from helping to construct temporary sanitary facilities to promote hygiene and to curb potential waterborne illnesses. Further, in Zambia, with support from the Mine Workers Union of Zambia and the Zambia Air Force, Scouts have made donations of over 500 bags of foodstuffs to communities in the Gwembe district, which is one of the most affected areas. The Scouts identified about 500 families that needed support and reached out to partners to facilitate donations that will go a long way in uplifting the welfare of families, even as they continue to mobilize for more assistance. So, some great news. Scouts rising to the challenge again in response to, this time, a natural disaster, not a man-made one. Always, always great to see that Scouts are always ready across the world to step in and help their communities and help one another. And staying on the African continent for a little bit, the Prometheus rover crew in Gauteng, South Africa, has been doing their part to fight climate change and air pollution in the area by distributing speckboom plants. Now, speckboom, if you're not, I probably mispronounced that, but, I am not a... Anyways, it's a sprawling shrub, kind of like a small tree, common to desert areas or semi-arid areas, at any rate, usually found in rocky places and grows especially in the parts of the Eastern Cape in South Africa. And apparently it grows very readily, very easily. It's an easy plant to stand up and take care of. So members of Scouting have been distributing this throughout the province, with the idea that they'll be planted and cared for at different Scouting properties. Quoting scout.org. The aim of the project, supported by the Africa Scout Foundation Youth Fund, is to have 550 speckboom planted throughout the Gauteng region, with the hopes of establishing speckboom thickets and bettering the climate. Speckboom acts as a carbon sponge, removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which then improves air quality. In addition to this green aspect, the project hopes to make a difference in the long term, to allow young people to meet, exchange ideas, and feel empowered about ecological issues of tomorrow. Thanks to its method, the project is estimated to have reached at least 5,000 young beneficiaries across the province. The plants were distributed to Scout groups with the intention that they care for the speckboom, teach their youth members, and propagate from those that they have received. The team have set up speckboom mother bushes or thickets at Arrow Park and Gilwell to support this. To ensure the eco-educational objectives are reached, the team has also produced a speckboom care guide. And in yet another story coming out of Africa, this time Ghana, Scouts have been stepping up in isolated villages to try and help communities cope with some of the challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, quoting scout.org. Isolated, cornered, and dependent on the big cities to cope with the global pandemic, some villages and rural areas in Ghana found themselves in a difficult position in the fight against COVID-19. To enable as many people as possible to cope with the changes brought about by the pandemic, Scouts of Ghana visited 50 communities, reaching about 4,000 people from 600 households, with information, hand-washing, protective equipment, and to help them manage the risks. The team also built tippy taps and placed buckets in strategic locations in the communities, such as churches, mosques, and chiefs' palaces, to ensure that people wash their hands regularly and easily. A tippy tap hand washing stand is a simple structure constructed with a bottle, a rope, and sticks. Two of the sticks are mounted at least 1 meter away from each other, and another stick is placed across the two upright sticks. A bottle is then hung in the middle of the crossing bar, and a hole is made below the neck of the bottle. A rope is passed through it to the ground, where another stick is tied, where one would tap with their leg for water to flow. The bottle is then filled with water and soap placed on the side. Anyone who wants to wash their hands simply taps the stick tied to the rope with their foot, and water flows from the hole below the bottle's neck. The tippy tap is not very difficult to construct and requires few materials to make. The Scouts constructed at least 5 tippy taps in each of the 25 selected communities, where they also taught some members of the community how to construct them and donated bottles and ropes for them to construct more at home. And over in Rwanda, Scouts have been working to improve food security and nutrition in certain households, quoting scout.org. 45 mothers from 45 households, 23 scouts, and 12 unit scout leaders in Burera district in northern Rwanda proudly graduated from the association's agriculture, health, and nutrition training and are now nutrition champions in their own homes and communities. This is part of activities of the Food Security and Nutrition Project being implemented with support from the Africa Scout Foundation Youth Fund. The goal of the project is to address different forms of malnutrition that have been affecting and causing stunted growth in children under 6 months of age from several villages in the district over the last decades. With the help of the Africa Scout Foundation Fund grant, the Rwandan Scouts have managed to create model school farms and family gardens to teach villagers how to sow, grow, and harvest vegetables to combat malnutrition. And now, moving further north over to, I believe, the UK, a scout group is celebrating its centenary year. Actually, I think they may be a year past that, but of course, COVID being what it is, probably caused a bit of a postponement. Quoting the New Milton Advertiser and the Lemmington Times. A scout group celebrating its centenary year is inviting the community to get involved in its biggest fundraiser. The 9th Lemmington Sea Scouts, set up in 1921 by Robert Hole, provides activities for 120 beavers, cubs, scouts, and explorers, led by volunteers. Plans to mark the centenary in July are underway, but are yet to be confirmed, as the group has been hesitant to plan too far ahead due to previous COVID restrictions. Its biggest annual fundraiser, a boat jumble, takes place at its headquarters in King's Saltern Road on 26th March from 9:30 a.m. until midday. According to Group Scout leader Anna Pike, quote, "The annual boat jumble is our biggest fundraising event this year. More than ever, we need the support of the local community, rely on the revenue generated to maintain the hall, service equipment, and give exciting, challenging opportunities to our young people," end quote. The group is unusual as it is a Royal Navy recognized Sea Scout group, an honor they have held since 1939. Out of 450 Sea Scout groups, only 105 are affiliated with the Navy. As a result, they are allowed to fly the red ensign with the crown and anchor, which is also worn on their uniforms. And another story out of the UK this week, quoting the Buxton Advertiser. The 8 scout groups for Buxton, Chapel-on-le-Frith, Chinley, Hayfield, and Whaley Bridge will be jointly responsible for conservation of the centuries-old lime kiln close to their campsite in Gradbach, Cornford. The structure had been in a poor state of repair until last summer when volunteers from the Southwest Peak Landscape Partnership spent a month rescuing it with support from the Association for Industrial Archaeology, the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and the Peak District National Park Authority. The Scouts saw work in progress and became interested. Paul Taylor of the 3rd Buxton Scouts in Harper Hill said, quote, "We have been looking at lime kilns around Buxton, so the Gradbach lime kiln extends our knowledge and area of interest. Taking part in activities to look after the site will help the Scouts gain the Derbyshire Archaeology Badge." There are evidently many cultural heritage assets in Southwest Peak, which are not scheduled monuments or listed buildings. Adopting these undesignated assets means that they get the attention they otherwise might not receive. Lime kilns are significant heritage assets. The type of field kiln found at Gradbach was generally used by farmers for making lime, which was spread on the land to reduce the acidity of soils to allow grass to grow. The process changed the moorland heath vegetation to grassland as new fields were enclosed for agriculture from the 1600s through to the 20th century. It is likely that it would also have been used in mortars, plasters, and lime wash in local buildings, sometimes being mixed with ochre from nearby ochre beds, leading to the characteristic color of farm buildings in the area. And finally, coming over to the United States, and this may also be true in Canada, although I don't actually have too many contacts in the guiding movement here right now. But at least in the US, it is cookie season again, one of 2 annual cookie seasons for Girl Scouts, quoting the CJ Capital Journal. Local Girl Scouts are looking for growth this year in cookie sales and membership. The past 2 years of the pandemic have taken a toll on both, but the 2022 Girl Scout cookie sale could keep things moving in the right direction, leaders say. The sale runs through March 21st. Stacey Horst, Troop Engagement Specialist with Girl Scouts Dakota Horizons, said that there are 145 Girl Scouts and 18 troops in the Pierre area with 90 adult leaders. Horst said that COVID hit cookie sales very hard in 2020 when the Girl Scouts shut down the sale early after the outbreak hit. In 2021, sales were a lot better, and they expect to improve on that this year, according to Skyla Nicholas, the Girl Scouts Service Unit Manager in the area. Local troops have more than 20,000 boxes to sell, but will probably finish closer to 27,000. So, if there happen to be Girl Scouts selling cookies in your area, you know what to do. And that is all the news I have for you this week. Thank you again for listening. And until next time, be prepared.